Welcome back,
Well,
everyone. I'm the
I'm
Bad Luck Gamer,
live.
and it's
Oh,
been a while. It's been
okay.
about
Things are.
3 weeks since the last video I posted.
Let's see here. What's going on? Also, I really hate the fact that I can't subscribe to my own channel so I can stop seeing the autoplay thing. Okay, it worked. All right. How annoying. Solid. Okay. Things are working now. I don't know what had to happen other than I ended up having to go in, unmerging and re-merging my YouTube account with my Streamlabs. So but we're now live. We're everywhere we're supposed to be. So hopefully that doesn't cause any major problems. But welcome everyone to the stream. I guess I'll reintroduce. Glue Boy isn't here today. There has been he's a little busy with something. Also, we have our big friend hangout next week. So today I'm being joined by my good friend Sir Peanut Butter, who is one of my players.
And now I have to do my great bit again about getting another adhesive to stand in.
Yep.
This is us holding our lives together with peanut butter right now.
This is holding the stream together with peanut butter right now.
Listen, you get what you pay for.
That's fair. But yeah. All right. Everything's working now. We have some interesting things to talk about. I've been in the midst of scrambling to get everything together. We have a bunch of company coming next week. So I am trying to get some videos kind of done ahead of time. Looking at the new Starfinder 2E content, as well as talking about some of the Gencon news. And honestly, I'm so hyped for this Gencon, even though I can't go and be there in person. I know that there's a lot of good tabletop goodness that's kind of in the works at Gencon right now. And I'm very, very hyped to see what actually like comes out of Gencon this year. What new games we get to talk about. One year I'm definitely gonna go and do a VOD of walking around Gencon, checking out all the various tabletop content stuffs. Seems the music's a wee bit too quiet. So I'm super stoked. The Starfinder 2E stuff is very interesting, but I'm a little mixed on how I feel about it, actually. So one of the major things they wanted to do with Starfinder 2nd Edition was make it completely like integratable with Pathfinder, which I'm super for. But there is also kind of the loss of some of how Starfinder was kind of like organized before, that they just couldn't recreate for a 2nd edition, essentially. So I guess I was just hoping for something that felt a little bit newer and different, and it feels very similar, which, to be fair, if you enjoy Pathfinder 2nd Edition content, you're going to enjoy Starfinder content.
Yeah, it seems like it's less of like its own system and more of just sort of an expansion of Pathfinder. It's like a new location to explore in your Pathfinder world.
Kinda, yeah. Though there has been some interesting things. I like how Starfinder is tooling around more with active skill, like combat skill feats that you can use. One of my favorite ones is like hit cover or whatever. Let's see. Let me go find them real quick here. Also, I'm very interested in some of the class stuff as well, because some of the classes do feel very interesting. And I gotta say, I never really played a lot of Starfinder. We did like one shot, and that was about it. So I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to like the before and after. But I have to say that from what I like kind of knew, it definitely does feel very different. I would love to hear from someone who played a good amount of Starfinder what exactly yeah, well, for sure. I just like to see like what exactly someone who used to play the game would feel. Yeah, dive for cover. This is a skill feat that requires expert in acrobatics, but it's a single action. You leap, land prone, and immediately take cover to gain greater cover against range attacks. That's a skill feat. That in Pathfinder, that feels like something that'd be a class feat. Like
yeah, it's very similar to like gunslinger class feats.
Yeah. There's also... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just love to see more stuff like that, where I can put more cool abilities on my character from somewhere other than class and race, I guess.
Yeah. I mean...
And archetypes.
Pathfinder 2nd Edition has kind of, unfortunately, always suffered from... hey, thanks, Devin, for the Prime sub. Don't forget, if you guys have a Prime, we're taking Prime subs. Also, thank you, Ryan Stevens, for the sub. Yeah, Pathfinder 2's skill feats have always kind of suffered. They're just something that has not been very well attended to since release. Yeah. And they've added some interesting things, but they all seem a lot more passive.
I also noticed that a lot of the skill feats that they add since are like very specific. Like you have to be playing very specific types of characters to get it, like the God's Hand ones or whatever. Or you like the medicine ones where you can't have gods and you like spit in the face of gods.
So I'm very excited to see some of this kind of being told around in Starfinder 2nd Edition. Also, if you enjoyed playing any kind of ancestry before who had multiple arms, they've done some interesting things with multiple arms in Starfinder 2nd Edition. Now, whether people are going to like it or not, I don't know, because again, I don't know how original Starfinder used to do it. But new multi-armed characters essentially have multiple sets of arms that they can swap to with an action. So any character with multiple arms has one main pair of hands at any one time, but they can swap to a different pair of hands by using an action to swap to those hands. Which...
It seems like barely better than having two hands.
Well, kind of. So the thing is, a little bit yes and a little bit no. Because Pathfinder 2E introduced the weapon swap action, it's something where it, like, if you're swapping between two-handed weapons, it's the same. But in Starfinder, it's a lot easier to go from dual wielding to using a two-handed weapon. Because in Pathfinder, if you went from dual wielding to a two-handed weapon, the most efficient thing you could do would be to drop your two one-handed weapons and to draw, or to drop one of them and then swap to a two-handed. And maybe even then, I actually don't know if you actually need to like re-grip with your other hand or not. It's something that I feel like it's a lot easier in Starfinder. You don't have to like justify a lot. It's just like, all right, you go from dual wielding to two-handed in a single action. Super easy. But I don't know how in play, like if someone really, really wanted to play a 4-armed or 6-armed character, you can have a two-handed weapon, a shield, and an item you want, and switch between them with an action. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think it is better in Starfinder 2e currently. Apparently, Starfinder grognards are upset because they can't just wield a bunch of weapons at once. Which, to be fair, in 4 arms is forewarned. To be fair, it's something that in Pathfinder, I don't know how big of a difference it would actually be to just allow someone to wield any weapon by swapping with an action, any set of weapons or whatever. Like change loadout for an action for weapons and hands. I guess for some feats, maybe like, swapping to bombs or something like that. I don't know, because predominantly players tend to focus on like a single mode of attack for any given moment. And like I played a character, my Magus was so fun because I had a unarmed martial art I could use. I had my claws that I got from the witch feat that let you like etch runes onto your claws. So my claws had different runes than my unarmed strikes did. And then I had a weapon in one hand. So at any given moment, I had 3 different types of attacks I could utilize, which was really nice. I could have runes for any kind of situation. I could swap everything out on the fly. And it was good. It never felt overpowered, though. And that's kind of one of the things where I'm like, I don't know if it actually does make a huge difference or not, if I'm going to be honest.
I bet there's a way to make it really overpowered, though.
Maybe.
Just to have them there.
It's just hard because of the 3 action system. Because before, I know, one of the things you could do was whenever you made an attack action, you could make another attack action at like a penalty, essentially. So having multiple arms, like that's how it works in 1st edition Pathfinder. Because that's how the Ratfolk Tailblade worked, where whenever you made it an attack action, you could make another attack at a penalty to the attack to hit for a chance to do some extra damage. But with the 3 action system, you can only ever really attack with any particular thing one at a time, The only thing would be feats that let you use multiple arms and sets of arms at the same time, which may become a thing in the future. Who knows for Starfinder? It's interesting. I do appreciate a lot more combat-related skill feats. I don't think all skill feats should be combat-related, don't get me wrong. But I would like to see some more options so that you could take something into combat. Yeah, -4 to alt penalty to all your attacks. Yeah, so I don't know. And someone would have to, like, tell me. I've been running into this kind of similar problem with D&D 2024. I was going to talk about D&D 2024, but I realized I just don't know anything about D&D anymore. I've fallen so out of line with that game that I really just don't even know what actually is changing in D&D 2024. Though one of the cool things they are really introducing with Starfinder is like the unique ancestries, which was a huge thing about original Starfinder. I know the different alien races was a huge thing. So the alien ancestries are all really cool. You can play a floating jellyfish creature. You can play a creature that at level 1 has a 25-foot fly speed.
Yeah, if you make an outer space system and don't have a bunch of awesome aliens, like people are gonna riot.
Oh, sorry, 20-foot fly speed. I do think the Barafu have their land speed I think is an error. Because they have a feat later that says your land speed increases to 20. But it says they have a speed, which is land speed of 25. Only has a 5 movement speed and a 20. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Which I don't know how relevant that is. But so yeah, they just have a 20-foot fly speed at level 1, which is new. Granted, it's a system that uses a lot more guns. So flight isn't nearly as good as it would be in like Pathfinder. Because most creatures in Pathfinder don't have range options. I really like some of the new art as well that they are coming out with for 2nd edition Starfinder. It looks really good. I like the direction they're taking with a lot of the characters. And the classes are interesting because the Mystic is kind of like the healing magic class of 2nd edition Starfinder, but not the same way that clerics do. Mystics have access to a feature called Mystic Bond and Vitality Network, where you can make a bond with up to 10 creatures. And then you have this Vitality Network that gives you an amount of healing of 6 + 4 hit points per Mystic level, so per level your character has, of just available HP you can give out. And then at the start of your turns, your Vitality Network regains 4 hit points. And that amount can increase. So you just, as an action, you designate one of your bonded teammates within 60 feet and just give them an amount of HP that you decide. Which is interesting.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Just like passive healing that you flip the switch on.
Now, it's not as strong as Pathfinder 2E's cleric healing, because like we saw how Fidget in our game could just almost full heal someone with a 2-action heal at any given time.
And how unicorns were easily the best summon.
And unicorns are really good. Early game, unicorns are a really good summon.
They're so good.
And so this is an interesting way. This is something that I'm very happy to see. We're not seeing Space Cleric. We're seeing the Mystic, which is very cool. I can already tell that the Onvoy is going to be a lot of people's favorite class. You're essentially like a combat commander, like leader class. You get a bunch of skills and you get some really good actions that are really good in combat and also help your entire team. They have an action at level 1 called Get 'em. You select a target within 60 feet. That creature just gets a -1 circumstance penalty to their AC and reflex saving throws until the beginning of your next turn. That's just an action. And they don't get a save. It's just you pick a target,
Really good.
and they're like, boom, -1. Also, it has this additional feature where it's called Lead by Example. If you attack the target you select before the end of your turn, you reveal a weak point. You gain a circumstance bonus to your damage rolls against the creature equal to 1 plus half your charisma modifier, and your allies get a +1 circumstance bonus to rolls against that, to damage rolls against that creature. And this amount of damage increases as you level. Hopefully it feels better at low levels than Onvoy does in first edition. Yes, there are news about Technomancer. So the Technomancer, and I got a newsletter ahead of time that was embargoed until today. So you guys are gonna get some news that that I don't know if they've done all their streams yet for the day, but you might find some new stuff out here. So Technomancer and one other class. Where is it? I have the newsletter here. Mechanic. Yeah. So Technomancer and Mechanic are getting play tested next May. Or no. Well, it says they're getting play tested early in 2025. The setting book is coming in May 2025. And the full release of second, so it might be May. I don't know. My news said the book won't be out until 2026 though. That's not what I got in my news. So did they change it? Because my newsletter here says the full release of Starfinder 2nd Edition at Gencon 2025. And those are coming out in a separate book. Speaking on magic hacking, yeah, Technomancer book is a different one. Oh, so they're coming a year after. I see. Okay. The news head didn't tell me that. So, you know, I've just been going off of what I've had available while trying to get ready to get these videos out. It's been a lot of information, and this is like, I barely got done doing videos for each of the classes in this player core 2 before they start releasing a lot of this stuff. So it's been a lot, honestly. I think the music is still a little too quiet. Turn it up a little more. Oop, that's too loud. How's that level of music for everyone? Is that good? Or should it be a little quieter? That's good? Okay. So I'm very excited. None of these classes feel like Pathfinder 2e ripoffs, which is not something that I was expecting, but it makes it more especially good to see. And you know what? I'm kind of in a mood for Pathfinder with guns. I feel like the idea of having a very like range heavy version of Pathfinder. Yeah, Soldier looks badass. The art for Soldier is killer. It's so good. Witchwarper also looks really interesting. So, Starfinder news. We got a lot of stuff coming out. We have a bigger emphasis on vehicles and weapons and hacking. Oh yeah, someone mentioned hacking earlier. There's a really funny feat I saw. What was that one? Master Troll is a feat you can select. You do need to be a legendary in Deception. It says it's a skill action that requires that you or your target are using a comm unit, datapad, or other computer. You've curated a collection of viral memes and infosphere lingo that you use as an arsenal to enhance your trickery. When you can attempt a deception check against the target's will DC. On a success, the target's off guard, and on a critical success, it's confused one for a round. In addition, the target's reaction gives you information about it as though you'd attempted to recall knowledge using an appropriate skill and receive the same result as your roll. Regardless of your result, the target is temporarily immune to this effect for 24 hours. So you literally get to hack in and troll an enemy, and not only does it make them off guard, but it's a recall knowledge action at the same time. That's super fun. Oh, darn. Alex isn't here. I need to get rid of this spam bot myself.
Woe is you.
I know. I need mods. Oh, there it is. Boop. They announced that fighter. I don't think I got the archetype information. Just some more information on all the adventure pass and stuff that are releasing. One of the ones that was mentioned that one is probably incorrect, but they didn't have the resources to confirm at the time. What's the archetype that came out? Oh, thank you, Guardian of the Rune, for the follow. I missed that. I'm very excited. There's a lot of stuff, and I still have to catch up on a lot of things coming out. But I've been poring over the Starfinder stuff, and I know y'all are gonna like it. If you want to play a Starfinder or a Pathfinder-like game that feels like it's a little punchier, I definitely think Starfinder is gonna be the game for you. Like, one of the things I think is really cool is that they have these shields. They just give you a constant bonus to AC without the need to raise a shield. Just wielding the shield.
D&D.
Sorry, what's up?
It's D&D.
It's D&D, I know. Though, they also have shields that you can raise for an even greater DC. Does the playtest have archetypes? I do not think so.
The big boy shields that you have to raise, it seems like it's just sort of the same as the normal shields, and those are like the tower shields and fortress shields of it, where it just has an extra action to increase further.
No, so what it is so you can get a shield that gives you one AC or 2 AC, and then the ones you raise, a raise action gives you 3 AC, and then another take cover action gives you 4 AC.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. There's also armor mods, like you can put a jetpack on your armor. Flight is super common in Starfinder. There's all kinds of access to flight. So Starfinder is going to be mechanically a super different game than Pathfinder, despite most of the rules being very similar, just by access purposes. Which is probably going to cause some problems in the end if for anyone who wants to, like, swap some things over, bring some things over. Because, like, a Starfinder character in the normal Pathfinder, like, Galarian setting feels like they would be a bit stronger. Not, like, a massive amount, but, like, a bit stronger than a normal Pathfinder 2e class. Just by grace of weapons and armor and stuff. It's not even necessary by class abilities. So I'm very curious to see how some of this is going to move. How this is going to work moving forward. I think we're in for some very fun times. I want to see some cool, like, modern Pathfinder setting stuff, which, to be fair, for us, we are going to be doing a futuristic modern setting for Plague Watch. And so we're going to have some more stuff. And now we have new guns to work with and everything like that. So I'm going to tool around with some of the different things. And we're going to have some cool art and everything for that. So I definitely recommend, if you are interested in watching a live play for Pathfinder 2e, especially one that uses some of more of this stuff, I definitely recommend checking it out. Starfinder was already a step between Pathfinder 1 and 2. It's good Paizo is doing this now after it feels like they've mastered and refined the system. Yeah, that's also something that I'm super hyped to hear, is Pathfinder's core chassis just being tuned and it seems like Paizo's getting more and more okay with giving the players more power, which I think is perfect, honestly. I think the GM can do whatever. If giving the players slightly more power allows GMs to make bigger combats that don't necessarily take way more time, and I think that would be good. Because one of the things I really want in tabletop in general is for there to be pretty good in-depth combats that don't take forever. Now, a lot of that is just players choosing their actions. I've played chess with plenty of people who take half an hour to make a move, you know. It's not like there's anything you can necessarily do to fix something like that. But there are just some kind of analog features of normal tabletop that I think are what slow it down more than anything. So, giving players some more power to deal with creatures faster, to let GMs throw more creatures at the players, I think is a good idea. Because, I mean, no one wants to spend half an hour killing a single creature, right? So you might as well spend half an hour killing 5 big creatures, or like 20 smaller dudes, you know? Honestly, if I was to think of something that was more of a straight upgrade for Pathfinder that hasn't really seen here in Starfinder, to be fair, I want more reasons to interact with like non-combat systems in Pathfinder. I want there to be subsystems that are more in-depth and interesting to work with, that are more like social or exploration, or, you know, different modes of play, essentially, because Pathfinder really doesn't have that. It's like, sure, you can go earn an income. It's just a couple skill checks. Or you want to go do like a series of non-combat actions. Like, okay, the GM is just going to have you make a series of skill check rolls to do those things, you know, rather than making those aspects like a different gamified element in itself. Starfinder first edition has a lot, especially in org play, so you heard. I mean, I hope so. I hope we see a bit more. I haven't seen too much of that here. I mean, beyond like the normal skill feats, which Pathfinder does have skill feats, but the problem is that a lot of skill feats just seem to interact with skill checks predominantly. Like, it might be a narrative, but it's going to be something that boils down to a skill check. So I just want alternative modes of gameplay where it gamifies more what you can get out of those kind of situations. Because you see it, I've seen it done in a lot of different games. I know, like, Blades in the Dark has some really interesting non-combat related skill, like, systems that you can interact with and all that kind of stuff. So I want to see more stuff like that. But I also like the funky pop kind of aesthetics of Starfinder 2nd Edition, which it has so much fun flavor. Like, they have a feat here called crowd surfing, where you just trained in acrobatics, and it lets you just move full speed in crowds. But the idea is that you can either, like, get crowd surf or do other kinds of fun things through, like, a thick crowd of people. The setting lets them do all sorts of stuff, like game shows, which are hard to justify that in Pathfinder. Yeah, exactly. So I think this is going to be good. I think moving forward, unless I really get that hankering for that classic fantasy feel, I think a lot of our Pathfinder games are going to be like modern interpretations, thanks to a lot of the stuff we get to see here in Starfinder. So honestly, Starfinder feels like a really good excuse to have any kind of blend between medieval fantasy and high sci-fi, which is, I think, only a good thing. Then you can kind of find what your particular thing is. I don't know, Booter, what's your favorite, like, genre of fiction?
Fiction as a whole? I don't know. I feel like I like to move around. I feel like if I stay in one thing for too long, I just get sort of bored with it. I'm a variety kind of guy. I like a lot of kinds of fiction.
But do you find like there is any fictions in particular you kind of like end up falling back to more?
I feel like if it's anything, it's probably just like classic fantasy stuff. Because that's just sort of like, it's like the biggest one, sort of, where it's just like I know what I'm getting, and I'm like, it has all the comfortable aspects that I'm familiar with there. But you can do a lot with it.
Yeah, I always do my best. I try to lean into like modern fantasy is what I like to do. Anything that has like a modern-ish kind of setting. Like, my favorite settings have typically been Final Fantasy settings, because they're always mostly, or at least like, I guess some of the later ones mostly, they're always like a kind of modern, not super sci-fi-y, though they oftentimes have like big areas that are super sci-fi. But like, you go to like a casino, you know, you go to like a game show or something in Final Fantasy VII, for instance. Final Fantasy 15 was my favorite rendition of kind of how their settings have gone, because it's just modern. People drive cars on highways, and you just get out of your car and go beat up some monsters on the side of the road. There's like video games, all that kind of stuff. So it's something where I really like that kind of stuff. I like something that feels... I'm also just like a big anime guy. And so I like a lot of the modern animes that have very interesting settings that have like anime powers in them. I think those are typically some of my favorites. So those are the ones I lean into. And I'm excited to see that become more of an option for Pathfinder 2nd Edition now that we have the Starfinder stuff. Because now you can just blend the two. And it kind of just works perfectly. Because even for the more techie stuff coming out in Starfinder, we're going to have options that allow you to like scale. Like, oh, this place just has cars, people have TVs, all that kind of stuff. But then you go to like Megatropolis and it's like super modern, like high sci-fi in a sense. I like how those two kind of things intersect in places. Yeah, I agree, Dead Phoenix. Modern fantasy with the secret world trope is the worst. I hate it. It never makes sense. It always breaks immersion for me. And it's always so edgy. And I like some good edge. But a lot of that kind of stuff is it's very punk a lot of the times. And yeah, Oi man, you came in on the Lancer train, and now you got some science fantasy like stuff coming out that I think you're gonna really like particularly. So it's, I don't know. Booter, when it comes to like the sci-fi stuff from Starfinder, what do you think? What's some of the stuff you're excited for?
I'm excited to figure out how I'm going to play a character that doesn't use guns and is just a space brawler.
They definitely have that.
Just because of how much you talk about how cool the guns are.
So just to be a contrarian.
Yeah, that's always my favorite thing to do in new systems is go, what's this about? Nah. Maybe I'll play a minor clan. See if this one has anything good for that.
Right, yeah. Man, I hate that this game they mentioned this one thing and didn't elaborate on this fringe
They didn't
aspect.
just mention it. It was a huge part, and then they were like, oh, and then it doesn't matter. They're just here, sorta.
The point is, you can take like one of the aspects of the other clans and just reskin it for one of the minor clans. That's what we ended up doing.
It was so hard.
You just wanted more from the minor clans. You wanted
Yeah,
them to have
because
their
they're the
own
coolest
unique
part.
things.
They were way more interesting than the major clans. I'm sure everyone really is getting interested in all this Seven Rings Discord.
You mean 5 rings?
Whatever. There's a bunch of rings.
You're talking all this bullshit. You don't
There's a
remember
bunch
the name
of rings.
of the game.
There's a bunch of rings, and that's all that matters. I don't even know what the rings are. Oh, they're the magic. I get it now.
Yeah.
It's all the elements.
Yeah, it is.
Like the main part of the system.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But glad you got there eventually. It's only been a year, almost. No, it's been over a year now, actually, technically.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I have a new character idea for when we inevitably play it again, and it's not a major clan.
Hard light hand wraps are fucking baller, by the way. That does sound real sick. Yeah, I mean, like, I do like how sci-fi never makes melee the worst option. Like, if you play Mass Effect, it's good to have guns and powers, and they help you a lot of missions. But then you see enemy Krogans bull rushing you, just ramming into you at Mach speed, and you're not like thinking, oh, they're melee, haha. You're like, oh, fucking shit, get out of the way, it's a freight train coming my way. You know? So it's just like, yeah, guns are cool, but there's also like power armor now, and really good like energy cutting weapons that just cut through solid doors. Yeah, Oyman's enjoying Starfinder here. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I want to see more on all this. And like even just with this playtest, the playtest book is 266 pages. The playtest is 266 pages. That's someone's full-ass game. And when core comes out, I'm sure it'll be like 100, maybe 150 more pages. But still, like, it's already pretty much like a full game. I haven't had the chance to, like, really read through it. And we all know that when you read something in depth, you're always going to start seeing like some of the problems. But I haven't found those yet, so I'm being optimistic that we have a very solid here. And honestly, from everything I've heard from the Starfinder team, they got some really good stuff. Ooh, and the augmentation stuff looks really cool too. Like, I want characters to be super moddable. I hate when any character in any TTRPG feels very stale and static for extended periods of time. To be fair, I've been playing Path of Exile lately, which is exactly the opposite, where it's just like literally you're running all over the place and you're like, ooh, I found this new piece of gear. Bam, slap it on, and you're like, oh, I'm so much stronger now. Feels so good. That's the kind of stuff I really like. And it seems like Starfinder is going to be super moddable in a lot of ways. A lot of your different approaches can change super easily. And that's also just something I think, like, I guess it's time for my weekly bashing on D&D time here on TableTalk. I hate leveling in D&D. It's the most unfun leveling I think I've had in most TTRPG systems. Some levels are great. Some levels you get some cool stuff. But there's a lot of times where, like, you level up as a wizard and you know what you get? New spells. Which is, like, cool, I guess. I get new spells I learned and maybe an extra spell slot. But that's it. That's all you get. Pathfinder's a lot better with this. And I feel like level ups in Pathfinder feel way better. But Pathfinder, some levels can start feeling a little stale. Sometimes it's just like some skill increases. A general feat that's like kind of okay. So I'm excited for Starfinder to be like, so you're moving on, you find like a really sick ass augment and you just swap out your augments as long as someone is trained in medicine and has the augmentation specialist skill. Not gonna lie, I feel like 3.5e had an actual meat to the customization by level up method of character advancement. Yeah, there were some interesting things. It was a lot more granular, and I feel like it... Like, I think everyone has to admit that, like, the D&D 3.5 early Pathfinder days were for people who really enjoyed in-depth, like, character customization and creation. So, I feel like we've moved in a good direction where everything now feels like it has a good amount of depth, but isn't so, like, granular that people who are not into it are getting left in the dust. Like, again, I talk about Path of Exile a lot lately because it's just been kind of like my new obsession. But it's a really good example of a game that surface level looks so complicated and so number crunchy and so, like, granular with some of the stats and stuff like that. But once you play Path of Exile for an extended period of time, you start realizing it really ain't all that much. Like, you're not looking for, like, a few percentages when you're looking for gear. You're not looking for, like, a few point differences. When you look for new gear, you're looking for, like, 100-point differences in your damage. When you're looking at, like, augmenting your skills, it's not like your minions move a little bit faster, so small that you can barely tell. When you augment your summons with a movement ability in Path of Exile, they zoom. They zoom fast. Booter's been watching me play some Path of Exile, and I've been running around with a unique that makes my golems extra small but super fast. And he watched me. He was just like, "Your guys are zooming. They're going all over the place."
It's like a video that's on fast forward.
Yeah, they go fast. And I made some of them even faster.
Chaos Goblin is my favorite dude.
Yeah.
Goblin dude.
Chaos Golem's really good. It does help that I also made my Chaos Golems extra fast by giving them speed support and giving them frenzy. So they just move so fast and they're hyper aggressive. Fucking bulldogs. I wish there was a Pathfinder 2 analog for a spell warp sniper. Wait, is that just sorcerer? Maybe, yeah. Fireball into a ray with sneak attack damage. There's there's definitely some interesting things in Pathfinder, and I feel like we've kind of lost some of the depth with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Like, to be fair, when I started Pathfinder, I was like, oh my god, this game is so good. It feels so nice to actually have, like, a swimming pool to wade in rather than D&D 5e's kiddie pool, which, to be fair, D&D does have a really in-depth, like, combat, or a really in-depth build system if you're in the I want to break the game community. Because I've seen some laundry list levels of, like, all right, so you need to take this at this level, this at this level, take this feat, get this magic item, do this, do that, and now you can do massive amounts of damage. But the problem is doing that, it's just breaking the game. It's not how 5e is supposed to be played. And so you have to work extra hard, but you also just get a lot of reward out of it, which is, I think, what a lot of people like about 5e. But with Pathfinder, I feel like it's so good that the system feels deep enough where you can do some really cool things. I've made some very good characters in Pathfinder 2nd Edition that are a step above, like, your average character as far as, like, what they're capable of, what they're doing. Like, some of the characters I made feel like a whole new class sometimes with some of the things I've been able to work into them, versus, like, someone just playing, like, a straight up version of a class, like just a fighter. Like, I really liked Devin's in our home game. I really liked his knowledge fighter. Like, having a whole concept based around being a fighter, but also, like, being a master of recall knowledge stuff, gave his character a whole nother dynamic that just made him really good in combat in general. And I feel like I've had the pleasure of having multiple summoner players in my games, and man, even summoning spells, I've learned can offer so much. You just have to be able to look and find some of the stuff. Like Unicorn is honestly one of the best early game summons you can get because they're just extra healing slots for essentially the same spell level.
I was sad because most of the low-level Fays are like some of the coolest ones you can summon ever, and I couldn't justify summoning any of them because Unicorn was so much better.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. And the thing is, in D&D, whenever it came to playing a new character, it was like, oh, I have this interesting character idea. I want to play a character who's like this, but, you know, does some interesting things. In Pathfinder, it's definitely been like, I don't know what to play next because there's so many interesting styles of play in the game. Like, there are cool character ideas in Pathfinder, but there's also just a plethora of interesting, like, build options that are super fascinating. And now Starfinder coming in, offering a whole bunch of new options, new dimensions. Imagine when they start releasing archetypes for some of this stuff. Man, I just thinking of like an Oracle Witch Warper or a Investigator Onvoy hybrid kind of characters sounds really cool. Man, a barbarian and soldier. Just give a barbarian a fucking Gatling gun. Sounds really good. So there's that. There is the War of Immortal stuff coming out soon, which I'm also super hyped for. Kind of falling back now to the old fantasy, but like, man, I want to see everything that Exemplar has to offer because that's such a cool class. It's just, you want to play a demigod, you want to play a class completely themed around being a demigod, that sounds cool. Or Animist. Animist, I know they've retooled a little bit. I'm very curious to see Animist because just imagining a character who has multiple spirits that give you options for new spell options, a rotating like repertoire of spells on top of being a prepared spellcaster. That sounds super cool too. And the class archetypes. I'm so hyped about the sheer number of class archetypes we're getting in the next, not the next 2 books. Well, no, yeah, actually, the next 3 books, because we're going to be getting some new, like, Magus hybrid studies in the Tiansha character guide. So there's just a lot of new character options coming out in the near future. Anything with the level 2 operative feat that gives you a range reactive strike. A range reactive strike is really, really cool too, yeah. It's a Pathfinder, anyone who is a Paizo enjoyer, we're eating good right now. I'm incredibly hyped to see everything kind of coming out. And that's not even talking about some of the cool things I've been kind of seeing around Gencon, like some new board games that are getting ready to come out, like Paizo related or not Paizo related. Did you see my post about the fighter class archetype? I went away from my computer for a bit, but I didn't hear you respond at all. Maybe I missed it. Which fighter one? I've been super busy lately. So, was it during stream? Or is it in, like, the general chat? Like, where is this? Oh, no, yeah. Okay, no, I know what you're talking about. The fighter class archetype. Yeah, I asked you earlier what it was called. Oh, it's based off Achilles. You get a weakness but gain powerful abilities. Okay, that sounds really cool, actually. You know, honestly, fighter does need some really good class archetypes. Warrior of Legend. Thank you, Easy. I know I can always rely on you. War of Immortals is a fighter class archetype that basically makes you Achilles, yeah. So that's pretty hype, honestly. Fighter needs some class archetypes, if I'm being honest. Not as a power thing, but as a... Fighter just kind of needs some flavor put into it. Because Fighter's a good class to be like, you can kind of do anything with Fighter, make any kind of character concept. Because the only thing Fighter really does is just augment your combat abilities. So it's just like, your character has some combat experience. That could be so many different kinds of characters. But having some really good class archetypes to make Fighter kind of like do some interesting things in combat, I think would be really cool. As a way to make up for not having a subclass cough. Well, see, this is a thing I very much believe is the case. Not every class needs a subclass. That's not 100% necessary. Some classes like Fighter are just fine because your subclass is just what weapon like you specialize in. But I think most classes could use some class archetypes because they're just new ways to play that class. Like, yeah, Investigator has some interesting subclasses, quote unquote, but Investigator really could use a class archetype too, which they are getting with the Palatine Eye Detective. Monk definitely doesn't need one either. Their stances can be theirs, but it would be cool to see a monk who you know, get some retooling around some of their features more specifically, like a wushu spiritualist kind of character would be kind of cool. So, you know, like, and to be fair, in the near future, we're gonna have no shortage of options. Like, already, yeah, Palatine Detective. Yeah, I figured they were gonna be a spellcaster one. That's what I felt that they were gonna go to next. It feels really very solid choice to go in. Honestly, for Magus, I just want them to make Arcane Cascade a free action. That's just what I want. They have interesting class features, and I like how they interact with Arcane Cascade. But since you need to go into Arcane Cascade, it just conflicts with the action economy so much. Blood Rager will also be really, really interesting. I don't know, Booter. What's one class that you really want to see a really interesting class archetype for?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of them could use it, because whenever I'm making classes, a lot of times I'll be looking through and be like, I wish there was more of these. I feel like, I don't know, my first thing that I started thinking about when we were talking about all this was like champions, but like those basically have it based on alignment, which doesn't exist anymore. It's illegal. It has it based on your personality. So there's probably not much more to do there, but like I know that like it was like lawful evil was like the like subjugation type. I feel like you could just do more with like different types of lawful evil stuff where it's not like the same type of stuff, and the same for like the other alignment versions of it. I feel like it's just sort of like one archetype of the good and evil paladin, basically.
Yeah, well, like, I think an interesting take would be like a champion that loses maybe its champion's reaction, but instead gets like an Eidolon-esque, like not straight up an Eidolon, but a Eidolon-esque kind of like creature, like that's
that'd be hype
with their deity. I think that'd be a very interesting take, or maybe not even their champion reaction.
It would
but
just
maybe...
be like it would just be like a bonus extra thing onto the champion's companion thing already.
Divine Ally, which is now moved to Devoted Blessing. Like having a option to be like, all right, so you don't do quite the same, or like, no, give up the champion reaction, but instead you get an ally who has other kind of like defensive bonuses, or like defensive bonuses, healing bonuses. Like you have a healing companion Eidolon if you're holy, or a devil like Retribution, like Vengeful Strike type offensive Eidolon-esque entity. And maybe for the neutrals you get like a creature that gives buffs and debuffs to, buffs to allies, debuffs to enemies, kind of shifting the balances kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think that'd be a really interesting class archetype, where you give up a really powerful class feature, but it gets exchanged for an equally interesting new mechanic, essentially.
I think if we're going with that, go all the way. Give a class archetype for each of the 3 champion options, with like the shield and the sword one as well.
Ooh, yeah, maybe. Or have new ways that they interact, or stuff like that. I think stuff like that would be interesting. Like, I think there's a lot of interesting ways a lot of the classes could be retooled. Like a fighter who specializes in gadgets, not in the same way that an inventor does, but they have like a hook shot thing that they can launch into an enemy and like pull them to them. Or if the enemy's too big, pull themselves to them, That plays around like interesting new variations of like kind of their play style. And you know what? I think as much as the remaster has been a big process for Paizo to kind of like get around, I think moving away more and more from like what they did with first edition, making it more and more unique, no longer as tied down to like the old ideas, the old sacred cows that was the D&D philosophies, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more stuff. Like, a part of me feels that Magus was them trying too hard to like keep Magus in line with how Magus used to be. And the class is just kind of messy for it. I feel like there's just... and I think original Oracle kind of had the same issues. In the new version of Oracle, I'm not necessarily as big a fan of, but I do like the curse-bound feats. And if they keep working on that, I think it'll be really good. Do you think Pathfinder 3E will switch to a dice pool system? I don't know. And I think the staff don't. Like, I think 2nd edition is going to be a pretty long-running edition, if I'm going to be honest. I don't think we're going to be seeing a 3E anytime soon. I think there's still a lot of room to work and develop the 2E space, that they don't have a need for a 3E, because we're not hitting the same point where original 1E hit, where we were kind of like running out of things to add to the system. Because while it was more granular and there are lots of moddable areas, there was a definite problem of kind of running into various versions of things just doing the same thing in different ways, altering the numbers the same way. How long did 1E go for? I think 8 years. I'll double check. Uh, 2009, and second edition came out in 2021-ish. So about 10, 11 years. Uh, 2019, end of 2019, so about 2020-ish. So yeah, it was about 10 years, give or take a few months. Which means we're not even halfway. I guess we would be about halfway through this edition, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Can't really imagine 2E going for less than a decade if that's the case. Yeah, I feel like a second edition is just not on the plate as of right now. Both came out. Oh, both came out in August. Okay, so 10 years. So I just, and I don't know. I feel like the 2E space has a lot of room to develop still. We may, maybe towards the end of the 2020s, we're going to see maybe some shifts in that direction. I don't know. All right, like, I may lose some of my piezo cred here, but I want to see the tabletop space open up a lot more than it currently has, and so I want to see some other games come out and really rock up the space. Like, I think I like Pathfinder. I like second edition. Starfinder 2E is going to add a whole new dimension that I think is really going to extend at least my enjoyment of the systems. But I feel like, for sure, I want to see new stuff. I want to see other games modernize, and I want to see other games kind of break out of this let's just make 5e but again cycle. Like, have some games out there take some Pathfinder 2e stuff. Like, I want to see more. And so even if there's a 3rd edition Pathfinder coming out, I hope that that's not my only hope for a good tabletop game in the future, I hope I don't have to rely on a third edition Pathfinder to be like, okay, hopefully we get something new and interesting and opens the space up again, like I feel like 2nd edition did. So that's my dream, but we'll have to see. Tabletop never sells super well unless you are super tied to D&D, really, unfortunately. So I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is an interesting conversation to have. Is like, Pathfinder's doing some great stuff. I think Starfinder is a really good new dimension, and because it's so compatible with 2nd edition, we now have way more wiggle room to have so many more different types of stories and adventures in and around the Pathfinder system. But I don't know. Is there any hopes and dreams y'all have for tabletop? Any cool, interesting things you want to see tooled around with, played around with? Like, what are some of the things that y'all want when it comes to tabletop stuff. What about you, Boot? Or what is there anything like tabletop related that you're kind of itching for, even if it's like vague?
I want more like different settings. Like I just like jumping around a bunch of styles of settings, like different genres of game. I want just to keep expanding that. I know there are a lot of them. More.
Well, I think one of the problems, I agree, and I think one of the problems with it is that everyone wants to recreate fantasy.
Yeah.
Everyone loves the medieval fantasy Tolkien-esque stuff. So everyone wants to recreate that. So we keep re-seeing it over and over again. And then a lot of the stuff that's just like, oh, you can make any kind of setting you want, like the Genesis system. It's just hey, you can do whatever you want. Make your own setting. Which is like, I came to you to buy a setting. Why are you telling me to do the work? I am very interested in the Stormlight Archive stuff. That's been blowing up a lot lately. And that would be cool to see. Even though the Stormlight Archive is kind of like it's a medieval-ish setting that has future tech stuff, kind of like hidden ancient future tech stuff kind of built into it. So I'm interested to see stuff on that, but man, like I want a really good fantasy modern setting that isn't Secret World, that feels really good.
I agree.
Because like I like vampire, I like werewolf, but they are like Secret World stuff. You have to really suspend belief to make it work. Yeah, Cypher System is kind of like that too. The system is so open, it can apply to any setting. Yeah, and that's fine. I think those systems are okay. But I want a setting. Give me a world to care about. Give me a world to dig into. The last setting I actually cared about in tabletop was Anima Beyond Fantasy. That game's setting is wild. And it's awesome. It's really cool. I wish the game just wasn't a train wreck, because the setting is so cool. It's as anime as it gets. It's awesome. But having a really solid setting to explore, mess around with new concepts and ideas, like I want a setting that as I'm learning about it, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Or I really like this world building, or I really like this power system, or something like that, you know? I think that was kind of one of my problems when we were looking into Legend of the Five Rings to play, was they're just like, it's about the warring eras of like the Edo period of Japan. Only there's yokai and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, this all sounds cool, like base buildy, like foundationally, but like give me a little bit more meat. Give me actually something to work towards, to build towards, or like anything. A setting to explore, not a setting to be like, all right, now invent your own adventures in this setting.
So it sounds like what you're asking for is something like, I don't know, just sort of random thing that came to my head. More built out minor clans or something.
No, not at all.
It would help. It would help.
It would help you.
Yeah.
Like something that, like, the setting is interesting. The setting is just like, there's so much to interact with and deal with, and it's not theme parky. It's something where there's this active world that the game, that's what I want. That's what I want. I want something that feels like an active world to interact with. because honestly, it's like you get dropped in a setting and you're just like, go have fun and make up your own fun. You know, like, sure, you can play the adventure pass, and those can be kind of interesting too. But I want a world where it feels like something needs to get done. Something needs to happen. Something like something is going to happen. What made the anima setting so interesting was the world was on the brink of war. There's these big powers. They're causing these problems. And the GM can be like, all right, the war starts, and this is what we're going to deal with, you know? Maybe that feels a little bit too closed in. Like, oh, but what if we don't want to deal with the war? And you totally could. The thing is that the setting puts it at the brink, like right before war is about to start. You could do whatever. And you could always do whatever. But I want something that, like, I have the option at least to interact with, like, something happening in the world, in the setting. I am always going to be forever made sad by the fact that the anima setting is so interesting, but the designers are cringe as fuck. Because all the video games they've released on Anima Beyond Fantasy have taken their interesting settings and made them super tropey and cringy. It always feels so tragic to me. But yeah, I want something like that. Galarian is interesting. It's this big lived-in world, and like what drew me originally to the system and like some of the first stuff I played with was the idea of dealing with Tar-Baphon in the Eye of Dread. It felt like a more important matter, you know, a whole region being taken over by undead as this ultra powerful lich is, you know, doing crazy stuff. Even core storyline doesn't do anything with Tar-Baphon. It's wild. Like, on a cosmic scale, Tar-Baphon definitely pales in comparison to something like the God's Reign, which the God's Reign is a very interesting line, and that's something I'm hyped about, where we have this idea of like, this is a big wide Paizo event. There's several adventure paths all tied into the God's Reign stuff. That's really, really cool. I guess just fuck the Eye of Dread and all the people who used to live in those lands. Tar-Baphon just gets to do whatever he wants, I suppose. I think that's another thing. With all the Starfinder stuff, is it? Did I get that in my newsletter? I know there was a new one. Oh. Yeah, Claws of the Tyrant. All tied to the Gravelands and Tar-Baphon, the Whispering Tyrant. The first adventure path of 2025 is Spore War, which is also really interesting. It's an anthology adventure. Hopefully. Granted, that still doesn't feel like as important as God's Reign, and that's kind of more what I was talking about, but I'm glad that they're dealing something with it. Fair enough. I'd forgotten that I read that earlier. I saw the Spore War stuff, and that's all I remembered. Because Spore War sounds interesting. So I don't know. There's a lot coming out, and Gencon is just getting started. I think there's gonna be some hidden treasures we're gonna find along the way. Like Fabula Ultima, I learned about during last Gencon, and Fabula Ultima is now like one of the games I want to play the most right now, despite how many sessions we've missed recently.
Despite canceling 2 months in a row.
I've been busy, and people have been busy. It hasn't even all been me. So, you know, I really like Fabula Ultimate. I think it has a lot to offer. I think we're due for another kind of interesting release. I know Stormlight Archive is getting its wheels turning. I don't think anything substantial yet. And man, Trench Crusade. Like, I don't know if any of y'all have heard of Trench Crusade. Go check out Glue Boys. You can check his channel and on my channel's homepage. Trench Crusade looks fascinating. I would love to see a little bit more into a alternate history World War II demons and god's game. I think that's hyper fascinating. Super cool. I don't know. I think maybe I just feel like the tabletop scene has gotten a little stale as of late. Like, there's definitely been some interesting games, but I feel like we're moving towards this period where we're going to hit all right, a bunch new games, tabletop's kind of going to open up, and we're going to see some new stuff. There's so many D20 games currently, like, I don't like 5e anymore, let's play a different D&D game kind of stuff that a lot of people have been hyped for, like DC 20, MCDM. I think there's another one I can't remember at this moment. There's a lot that are kind of like on the horizon that we're going to see some interesting stuff about. And so I really think over the next couple years, we're going to see some really interesting stuff. And then Paizo coming out with the Starfinder 2nd edition, which they aren't holding back. Jetpacks, energy shields, all these interesting classes that do feel like legitimate new classes, not retooled Pathfinder 2e classes. Like, I think people's imaginations are going to be sparked, and I think there's going to be this hunger building up for new settings, new games, new any kinds of things, you know. So I'm ready, and VTTs have been growing so dramatically over the last couple of years, especially with Wizards of the Coast dumping money into making a VTT, which apparently didn't work super well, and Pathfinder kind of doing the same thing. And man, all the stuff Pathfinder's been doing, Pathfinder must be eating good. I think they must have been doing some really good sales after the OGL, because they've been coming out with more and more like expansions for Pathfinder as of late, which has been super cool to see. And now with the Pathfinder space being opened up with all this new 2E related content, I am really excited to see what future classes, archetypes, everything. Foundry got both Starfinder 2 playtest and, well, some of Pathfinder 2 today. Yeah, that's so strange, and I'm very curious as to why that happened. Apparently there was a coding error. It's so strange that Player Core 2, the book they had the most time to work. Maybe they have the less time, honestly. Well, I don't know. It feels like they should have had more time, but maybe not. To like get out seems to be the one that has the most problems, which is super interesting. Huh. I don't know. Is there anything else y'all are hyped up about for Paizo announcements? Or anything you can't wait for Paizo to work on or to do? Like, what are some of the things y'all are hungry for? Because I feel like I'm sitting here just being like, look at all this great stuff. I want more. Maybe that's just me. What about you, Booter? Is there anything tabletop related that you're particularly interested in? Doesn't even have to be Pathfinder related, but like board games, war games.
I don't know. I feel like right now I'm in a state where I'm like, Paizo's making a bunch of cool stuff. Just let me play it already.
Yeah.
I just keep looking forward to it. Like, when can I make an exemplar? I want Tinsha stuff.
Yeah, the Qiansha, I'm super hyped about. I'm gonna be doing some videos on the Qiansha stuff when it comes out as well, which is super exciting because I'm despite all my grievances that I have with Magus, I'm so interested in the Magus hybrid studies they're releasing. They sound super interesting, and I'm actually really curious what like the future of Magus design is gonna look like. So I actually have some stuff around there. I want to play a Lancer-esque drone commander in the Pathfinder Starfinder engine. True. Give us some real like minion management play. That sounds really fun. The Technomancer and mechanic stuff are going to be really good. Technomancer, I think, is going to potentially be really, really interesting. It could be boring. It really depends on what they take. Everyone seems super hyped about it, so I'm assuming that they're going in really good directions. I never played old Technomancer, so I never played old Starfinder, really, so I don't really know what the potentials are. But I really hope they come out with some new, interesting game mechanics. And you know what? Honestly, I've also been kind of in a direction, man. I wanted to play some good board games. Like, all of our friends are coming over this next week, which is not too far away from now, honestly. And we're gonna play like Scythe and a whole bunch of board games. I just want to play some good board games. I want to play some good like tabletop in general, not just RPGs. I do love some good RPGs, but I don't know. I feel this craving for more nerd stuff in my life. Maybe I'm turning into a terrible, terrifying nerd because I've been getting into Path of Exile lately. Soon I'm gonna start making spreadsheets.
Turning into one.
No, like a mega nerd, like a geek. Not just like a, hey, you want to play some tabletop? You want to play some stuff like that? But like a actual like gets a lull too into it kind of nerd. I don't know. I hope Starfinder 2E ship combat is tactical and less of a grind. I hope so too. They said they've been working on a lot of Starship stuff, but it is kind of deep in the works right now. So I think they understand more than any how ship combat used to be like, and I feel like they really want to modernize and innovate ship combat. So it would be cool. It would be cool to have, like, again, give me more alternative modes of play. Give me other things where I can build my character in directions to do like certain modes of play better than others, you know, because I like that. I think those dynamics are interesting. Like, that was one of the cool things Star Wars did, where like the pilots, the ace pilots, they were like in whatever games, they were kind of like whatever, but when they got in a ship, man, they really showed their stuff, and you always were glad to have an ace pilot in your team. I want stuff like that. I just want more systems to interact with, I think, is what I'm really craving. Like, give me more modes of play other than just straight combat. Shake things up a little bit. Yeah, you're probably right, Dead Phoenix, which is probably true. Starship stuff will probably be coming out 2026. But if they get it right, it'll be worth the wait. What if I wanted to make my little Corvette do a 360 no-scope with a railgun? Sounds sick as hell. One kind of unfortunate aspect to all the OGL stuff is Paizo's been so behind with everything because they've just been so overworked. We just kind of already know about most of the stuff coming out. So there's not like... Gencon's been interesting. We've been getting some news, and Starfinder 2E has been massive. Don't get me wrong. But, like, it's like we know most of the War Immortal stuff already. We did hear some interesting stuff about their fighter. But, like, there's just no, like, wow factors, I feel like. Yeah, I think Gencon has some hidden treasure that needs to get dug up. Now that we've hit about the last 30 minutes, I don't know if everyone else has all the Starfinder stuff, but if anyone has any questions about Starfinder 2nd edition playtest, I can answer them because I have the book open and ready. So if there's anything anyone wants to know. Seems like some other people know a little bit more about some of the announcements. I haven't been able to watch, unfortunately. I've been super busy. But if you talk about them in chat, I'm sure someone else will mention. Is Salvage Union... What's Salvage Union? It's a game. Looks like from Leyline Press. The art looks interesting. It's kind of like it's like a mech survival TTRPG because you scavenge for parts and stuff like that. Post-apocalyptic, war-torn. What's the class I'm most excited about? Solarian. I want to harness the power of both the sun and a black hole. It's just like, and the art they got for the iconic for Solarian is so good. Give me a pseudo-gravity manipulating character. It's also a melee class, so, you know, there's that aspect to it too. It's just so good. That's what I'm the most excited about. Oh, you know what? That reminds me. One of the interesting things I really find cool is how they're using automatic weapons in Starfinder. So automatic weapons now, like you have this auto fire feature where you don't make an attack roll, just all enemies in a cone need to make a reflex DC against your attack or take damage, which is really cool. It means you can like spray and pray, and like someone's gonna get like a little nicked, a little hurt by your weapon. It's really good. I think that's a very good way to like implement automatic weapons into a system like this. Having a whole class that kind of focuses around that seems uber cool. Yeah, the subclass also double the cone size. That's so good. I am interested in Pathfinder with guns, honestly. I think there's a lot of interesting ways the gameplay can be augmented with that kind of stuff. Because, unfortunately, sometimes Pathfinder can feel a little slow when it's just like, alright, I use this action, I use this. Like, your actions are boiling down to I hit the enemy once, twice, done. Move 1, 2, done. Move 1, 2, done. There are some ways to augment around it, but like guns give you a lot of opportunities to like do other things other than like move with your actions. I feel like auto and area weapons are like martial cantrips in a way. Kinda, yeah, for sure. Solarian is definitely my favorite, I think, class moving forward. We'll see how I haven't really looked 100% into everything yet, so I still have yet to like fully comprehend everything. But Solarian looks very fun, a very stable way to play the game. The Witch Warper has some really interesting aspects. Honestly, the Mystic, even though it's a little straightforward, looks really good. Onvoy especially looks like a fun character that I would enjoy playing particularly. Okay, good. Music is still going. So yeah, I don't know. Gencon, we're gonna see a lot of stuff. And hopefully by the time next year comes out, when we get full ass, you know, like Starfinder and everything like that, we're going to see even more cool things. I feel like, again, we're right on the threshold of tabletop, where we're gonna get some really cool board games, some really cool TTRPGs, and VTTs becoming more automated, making tabletop more accessible. I think we're coming up to a gold era. I think we're gonna have a really cool nerd explosion when it comes to the tabletop space. Not gonna lie, my biggest hope for Starfinder 2 is to port my Pathfinder 2 wizard and play with new tech spells and mix match with Pathfinder 2 spells. Not to mention Fireball plus the Spell Strike plus shoot a Seeker Rifle. That does sound pretty cool. And that's why I like modern fantasy stuff. Because it's like inherently based on the idea of intermixing like future tech with like archaic kind of styles of play. Like every anime, it's just like we got guns and there's always a guy with a shield and sword, you know. Honestly, I love to see a tabletop that really takes high impact combat in. Like, I want to see a game where you're knocking enemies across the battlefield, moving at insane speeds, doing all kinds of really cool anime stuff. That would be cool to make that works and is like well balanced. That sounds like a really fun time. Just make it feel like your character does a lot. Oh boy, imagine the Caliban as a Pathfinder 2 character. And to be fair, you would just be considered a large ancestry. A Caliban is not a big mech. Knockback shotguns, oh my. Yeah, there's honestly that could be like a homebrew. I could see it for sure, especially as the Starfinder stuff getting added in. A reload that hurts adjacent enemies. They have those actually already, now that I'm thinking about it. There's a reload that lets you strike. So yeah, just a reload that does like just flat like 3 damage to someone who's nearby or something. Could do it. Be really cool. And I don't know, maybe this is just me. Does anyone else feel like there's been this kind of rise in sci-fi lately? I don't know. Have you been feeling this, Booter?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. I feel like it's sort of like a general rise in all nerd stuff. Like, there's a lot of fantasy stuff being done more today, too. Like, I think sci-fi is just the second place to fantasy, like, always. So it rises with it.
I could see that. That reminds me, I need to go and order my hardcover Lancer book. The art looks so good. I am particularly hyped for the Lancer stuff. I really wish they'd come out with another Lancer book, honestly. I know they got a really small team, but I've been really itching to see some new stuff. I gotta finish up my Why This Mech Is Awesome series, but like, there's been a lot of crazy homebrew and third party. War games have also been on the rise lately, but that's because of the VTuber boom in the Warhammer space. Who would think that VTubers would go and explode Warhammer 40K? Yeah, I mean, like, the adventure books. I just want some more interesting stuff for Lancer. They have so much room for growth and whatnot. Also, like, I'm pretty sure I know my audience, so I'm pretty sure no one is super optimistic, but does anyone think D&D 2024 is going to be a good thing at all? Has anyone heard people say it's going to be a good thing at all?
I think it's going to come out and be immediately forgotten.
That's what it feels like. It feels like an unnecessarily expensive remaster, like errata book. I I think myself, along with a lot of other people, have been severely disappointed in just D&D refusing to change. Like, yeah, they've changed some of their stuff around. I mean, it has a very low bar to clear, but apparently a lot of people who actually care hate it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's so strange. D&D is by far the biggest game in the space. Not even a competition, not even a question. And yet, you know, I've gathered here a fair number of nerds, and no one has heard anything. It's so weird. Just better than base 5e, but only for people who never play another game. Yeah, it seems boring. You would think a new D&D book would be monumental. And they just didn't do anything with it.
Well, it's just because they're, like you said, D&D is such a huge thing. It's by far the biggest tabletop. Like, they're scared to change anything about it because, like, then it won't be. Like, they're not confident enough that people will like tabletop as a whole and not just 5e. Which, to be fair, at this point is a good amount of their audience. The people who are still with it. But, like...
Yeah,
it's also just, like, the people who are still doing D&D stuff will get the D&D stuff no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't really have to try.
Yeah, I just I don't know. I really wish that D&D people could get something good. I do, honestly. Like, I just don't want to hate on D&D. I don't think people like D&D, people like the experiences they had with D&D, which is a weird way to put it. But I think
that's true.
Yeah, it's just I think the thing is like the game itself isn't great, but the way that people have just ham-fisted homebrew into the game like it's everything. And they're just like, man, we just had these great games because our DM did a lot. Like, we have a group of friends who currently play D&D. Their D&D is so homebrewed and so home-crafted that you would need a separate book to tell someone how to do all the changes. For Paizo heads, we're almost programmed. It's almost programmed into us to how unpalatable 5e is. That's, you know, that's the thing. Like, that's the internet take that I dislike the most. Because I'm open to enjoying 5e. I ran 5e for a couple years. Like, officially for elite play stuff. I did it at conventions. And I met my wife, essentially, at Adventure League. I have every reason to want to like D&D 5e. But I just can't because the game's just not well done, well designed. Not only that, but the game has been the longest running modern TTRPG that's been so big in the space, I believe. I don't know, maybe it depends on when the when did not Powered by the Apocalypse, or was it Powered by the Apocalypse?
What are you talking about?
There's another core game that's been done over and over, and it's Powered by the Apocalypse, I think. Or it's another game it was based off of mostly. Because Blades in the Dark. What's Blades in the Dark use? Is it powered by the Apocalypse? No, it's Forged. Yeah. Okay. So when was Powered by the Apocalypse started? (2010). When's D&D 5e? (2014). Okay, so Powered by the Apocalypse is the current longest running modern system. But D&D is the second, and it's been running for 10 years now at this point. In that whole time, 10 years running, they came out with one more class. Isn't that ridiculous? And Jeremy Crawford, who I used to like, I just think he's a hack now. He's just like, you know, honestly, I think we should remove more classes. I think we should remove classes because what is a new class but just a subclass of the basic fighter, caster, rogue tropes?
That's so wild.
And it's like, I think you misunderstand what the purpose of a class is. Yeah, sure, theming is important, but it's game mechanics for people to interact with. That's the thing that people want when it comes to a new class. Like, yeah, themes are great. Again, Thaumaturge is such an interesting class. I love me a Constantine-esque class. It's not necessarily a caster. Super cool, very fun. But Thaumaturge mechanically is also super interesting. You can do some really cool. Heck, one of my favorite classes is Inventor. You can do some crazy shit if you work Inventor really well. So good, because the mechanics they use are different. But like, subclasses in D&D, some of them give you, like, for instance, Bladesinger. Bladesinger is very different than normal wizard. But it has like the wizard kit kind of tacked onto it and leveling and everything. Imagine how much better Bladesinger could have been if it was just made in its own class. Well, in some of the classes, they don't even have anything majorly different with their subclasses, just like what spells they get access to or some of the stuff. Like, it ranges pretty wildly. And yeah, that's true too. 2024 doesn't even have Artificer. You know how much of a shit idea that is? Artificer is a very beloved new class, quote unquote, for 5th edition. And they're like, nah, it doesn't get to be in the new book. And yet we still get Warlock. Which also a favorite class by many people, as much as it is a class, I suppose. And, you know, they fixed Paladin by making Paladin more action intensive. That's such a dumb idea. Now Paladins have to use a bonus action to smite when they strike an enemy. Which is just going to tie up the Paladin's actions even more than they were already before. Like, all right, maybe we're being a little hyperbolic here. There are some interesting subclasses. The Circle of Spores Druid. Like, if you played Baldur's Gate, you probably got to play around with some of the subclasses, and they do offer some different things. But honestly, like, The Artificer is old enough to be into Gen Alpha memes, yeah. Like, I don't want to be a hater. Just give me proof that something good is coming out of D&D, please. We play a wide variety of games. I played a borked up game for many years. Anima Beyond Fantasy, so good, but your characters can range from like just a guy to a living nuclear weapon. Which makes some games fall apart because there's no balance at all. The GM can't test the party because some of the party members can't take what would be required to test the stronger party members. Like, it's atrocious. Some of the spells really don't even tell you what they do. There's reference to tables that don't exist. And you know what? I could find more reasons to enjoy Anima Beyond Fantasy than D&D 5e. Even if what you're saying is, oh, I like playing D&D because it's easy. I think Fabula Ultima is just an easier, better designed game that lets you do the weird, janky stuff that people like in D&D, only more legitimately.
Yeah, I think another thing is that like for D&D 5e, the culture is so heavily dependent on homebrew stuff. Like, the only people who are still playing it are like either the people who have been playing for 10 plus years and have homebrewed their own system into the game,
They made
or
their
they just
own game
made a
at
game
this
that they
point.
actually want to play. And then it's the people who are still newish to tabletop who are coming in and playing in those people's games, or like seeing those people, their podcasts and live plays and stuff, and just using their systems anyway.
Yeah, so many Oyman said this earlier, so many D&D tables have such a long laundry list of homebrew and house rules, yet they all say it's too difficult to learn a new game. And it's just like, people can't even reference half the rules you're using. Fuck, that's how I used to play a lot of tabletop games. People are just like, you should write down all these rules. I'm like, I don't want to do that. That sounds like a lot of work. I changed this game so dramatically to make it workable. Yeah, exactly. It's copious amounts of homebrew or just reveling in breaking the game. And right, like, have fun however you want to have fun. If it's you and your table and you're enjoying it, sure, go whatever. I'm not going to shame you off if that's the stuff you kind of enjoy. But, like, I don't know. And see, and the thing is, right, I feel like there's this misconception that Critical Role makes or breaks D&D, which is honestly not true and has been factually proven to be not true. And to be fair, it was something that I definitely have said before in the past. Like, Critical Role helped build D&D up for sure, and I still think that's very much the case. But every time Critical Role moves away from D&D, their numbers plummet for their streams. And they get tons and tons and tons of emails about, you know, like, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why aren't you playing this particular game? Like, why aren't you playing this? Why aren't you playing D&D? Why are you playing this new game system like Candela Obscura or whatever? And it's sad. It's sad that, I mean, they're still wildly successful, don't get me wrong. But it's sad that the culture is so D&D pilled that you just can't move away from it without completely shattering your views. essentially. Like, anything that is their current, like, campaigns, D&D focused, gets hundreds of thousands of views. Anything that's not might get 100,000, maybe 200,000, but mostly are under 100,000 for sure. And like some of the other games, it's dramatic. Like I'm looking at two different games next to each other. There's Feats, whatever that campaign is. I'm not super up to date. 25k views. Right next to it, Critical Role Campaign 3, Episode 88. 690,000 views. That's several magnitudes bigger. Not even close. Like, they have a Candle Obscure campaign, like episode 2 for Hide and Bone. This was a pretty big one. 152k views. That sounds really nice. Like, literally, just a little bit after that, Rush for the Bloody Bridge, Critical Role Campaign 3, Episode 82. 940,000 views. Still several magnitudes larger. Like,
I wonder how much of that, though, is just like people only watch the main campaign.
maybe.
Like, if they made campaign 4 something, some other system, I wonder how many people would care.
I don't know. To be honest, a lot of the numbers right now are not looking like that's a very favorable choice. I hope they do something differently, and if we see the numbers drop, then we know.
Welcome to Exandria.
But I think if Critical Role did like a hard swap to just sort of variety channel, I think that would be huge for tabletop.
I think so too, because
I think it would still bring over a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't be into other systems.
like I definitely think that the peak of D&D is not the peak of tabletop. The peak of D&D is the peak of D&D. It's just kind of a separate thing for people who have the idea. Critical Role Campaign 3 still has the problem of viewer retention falling off because holy hell, the narrative is getting heavy. Yeah, I mean, that always tends to happen too. But I mean, still, like hundreds of thousands of views for a live play, like 4-hour live plays, that's insane numbers. Like, that's not like normal YouTube video kind of numbers. Would they be willing to do that? I don't know. They have a lot of people on their payroll. Granted, they've been diversifying their portfolio. They have a lot of money in other places, so they might have the capability of doing so. I don't know how much their ad revenue is actually playing into things. They make wild amounts of money with Critical Role. Like, people, I think everyone generally understands, they make millions with Critical Role. And not just through their live plays. So, yeah, I hope they do. I hope they do, because you know what? Tabletop was never going to be the world's greatest hobby. You know what I mean? It's always going to be for specific kind of groups of people. A lot more people than it used to be, admittedly. I mean, heck, we got to 7,000 subs, which, by the way, first stream since 7K. We earned 1,000 subs last month. That's wild. That's an insane achievement for a channel my size, especially. there's obviously a desire to watch tabletop content. There's a lot of people out there who do. But there's also going to be more people who are going to want to watch kids unboxing toys. You know? Like, there's going to be more people who just want to listen to internet drama all the time. Heck, there's going to be more people who want to watch another stream of crap. What's that game everyone hates that's super popular? Fortnite. There's also Valorant. There's also the other shooter group game. I think it begins with an A. My brain is a little foggy right now, if you can't tell. I've been doing a lot of work. Been reading a lot.
I feel like people don't really hate Fortnite anymore. Or if they do, they're the ones that don't know what's going on with Fortnite and think it's still the same.
Apex Legends. Thank you, Amen.
This Fortnite is going wild.
It's always been wild. It's crazy.
But like they just keep adding stuff and it's a lot. Like it's a respectable game now.
I don't know. I don't know about respectable. But, you know, that's the thing. Tabletop is never going to be bigger than any of those things. But I do think tabletop can be pretty big still. I do think, like, Critical Role, Dimension 20... Heck, actually, what's Moist Critical skill check running right now? Has it been falling off? Don't forget to log in and get your Cybertruck this week. Yeah, so skill check, which is Moist Critical Charlie's nerd channel where they play Magic and they have a D&D game running. That channel's like a couple months old at this point, and it's got 120k subs. And like the D&D stuff they do, to be fair, is not some of the biggest polls on the channel. It looks like Magic the Gathering is way bigger on the channel than the D&D stuff. But for just a random D&D channel, for a channel that has no specialty in D&D whatsoever, from people who don't even take tabletop that seriously, and their game's kind of messy, they get like over 10k views for each of their 2-hour streams, which that's pretty big for a 2-hour stream of a tabletop game. That's a pretty decent amount, honestly. And with Warhammer getting up and everything like that, like tabletop in general, I think you just needs someone to make it easier to consume for a casual audience. And when that happens, then it will get huge. So there's definitely interest for sure. And some of the biggest people are talking about it. There's always going to be some level of interest. I think even a variety tabletop channel will soon be able to be in the 100k plus sub like group. There are a couple actually that I know of, but I think it'll become a more and more common thing as the years go by. So I don't know. Gencon has been awesome. I'm so hyped for Starfinder, and it just opens my mind to like all the possibilities. But I think we're in for some good stuff. I think we are in a we're going to have now more interesting Starfinder or Pathfinder games than we used to before. Starfinder for the people who just want that site that sci-fi twists. I think we're eating good. I think we're in a good spot. I'm going to keep making content. I'm going to keep making new stuff, talk about new games, talk about my favorite things in those games. I'm going to be covering Starfinders. Expect some videos here very, very soon. I'll be also doing some builds for anyone who's been looking for some builds with the new remaster stuff. And I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep trying to make tabletop as interesting and consumable as possible for a general audience. And we'll see where we are in a couple years, hopefully, you know. Ooh, mythic Starfinder characters. That's an interesting idea. Legendary, god-powered Starfinder characters. That is a really cool idea, actually. I like that kind of genre mix. All right. That's going to be it for us here today. Thanks so much to Booter for coming out and talking a few times during the stream. I appreciate you being here.
I save all my powerful thoughts for key moments.
It's not about how much power you use, but when.
Exactly.
And, you know, oh, yes, news. So, that reminds me, there will be no stream next week. We are going to be getting ready to do meetings and masterminds. We still need to do our character creation stuff for the Plague Watch campaign that's coming up soon. So next week, no streams. Following week, we're going to be doing the Plague Watch character creation stream, where we get to run through an adventure and see how many civilians survive to be heroes.
I'm not going to die once.
We'll see. No, I'll kill your characters intentionally. Each of them.
I have to borrow someone else's character.
And then next week, though, there will be videos. I'm going to do some Starfinder videos over this weekend to prep them ahead of time so that they can release, so there won't be too many content gaps. And then there's just going to be more Player Court 2, more Starfinder, and probably do a little bit of Lancer and Fabula Ultima until Tianxia comes out, and then I'm going to cover Tianxia. So there's a lot of stuff coming on the channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, join our Discord, linked in the description below. And yeah, I guess we'll be seeing you next time. So we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.